the breath of the river, before there was land, before there were stars. There was only the endless flow, dark, heavy, alive. The water did not move as rivers do now. It pulsed like a heart beating in the deep silence of creation. It had no name, for names had not yet been born. In that boundless sea of stillness, a single spark trembled, faint, golden, breathing. From it came the first sound the world had ever heard, a low, echoing hum that rippled through the dark. The hum became current, the current became wave, and thus the Mekong began to flow. No one knows when the first breath of the river was drawn. Some say it was exhaled by the earth itself, sighing after the long sleep of chaos. Others whisper that it was born from the tears of a forgotten god, weeping for the world yet to come. But deep below, in the molten veins of that newborn current, something ancient stirred. It was neither beast nor god, yet more than both. It was the Naga, the spirit serpent, whose scales shimmered with the colors of dawn and whose eyes reflected eternity. For 1,000 years, it slumbered in the depths, coiled within its own dreams. In its sleep, it saw visions of forests rising from silt, of rain falling like silver, of creatures learning to walk upon the banks. And with every dream, the river changed. The Mekong's course wound through time as much as through land, shaping valleys, feeding roots, whispering life into the soil. When the first winds began to blow across the plains, they carried the faint scent of lotus and clay. The Naga awoke, its eyes opened, twin suns beneath the surface, and the water trembled with life. From its breath rose bubbles that shimmered gold and red before bursting at the surface, releasing warmth into the cool air. That warmth, the villagers of the future would call fireballs, but in the beginning, they were the spirit's breath, the heartbeat of the world. The Naga watched the dawn break upon the water's skin. Above, the sky turned to gold. Below, the river glowed with its own light. For a brief moment, heaven and water were one. The Naga whispered, and mountains listened. It moved, and valleys were carved. Its tail brushed the sea, and islands rose like jewels from the foam. It was the first guardian, the soul of balance, and for countless ages it kept silent watch. Then, from dust and breath, came man. At first, humans were few, soft-voiced and wide-eyed. They came to the water not to conquer, but to wonder. They cupped it in their hands, drinking from its depths, feeling the pulse of the serpent god within. They built no walls, no bridges, only altars made of stone and faith. They offered flowers, rice, and the smoke of sweet incense. They sang songs to the river at dusk and listened to it answer in the language of ripples and wind. The Naga listened to. In their prayers, it found echoes of its own loneliness. It began to care for them, sending rain when they hungered, stilling storms when they prayed. The people thrived, and the Mekong bloomed with life. But time, like water, always changes its shape. As generations passed, the songs became shorter, the offerings fewer. Men began to claim the banks as their own. They built houses upon the sacred floodplains, dug channels through the spirit's veins, and fished beyond what the river could bear. The Naga watched as the water grew heavy with greed. Yet it did not strike. It waited, patient, eternal. For in its ancient wisdom, it knew the river always remembers. And so it slept again, drifting within the heart of the current, dreaming of balance. Ages passed. Civilizations rose and fell along the Mekong's spine. Empires carved their names into stone. then crumbled to dust. Still, the river flowed, feeding, destroying, renewing. Its breath became mist upon the rice fields, its sighs the wind through the reeds. Then, one night, the world changed again. The moon rose full and blood-red, casting its reflection across the water. The current shimmered with a strange light, and from the depths the Naga stirred once more. It sensed something new, a voice unlike any it had heard before, a voice of mortal beauty and sorrow, a princess wandering by moonlight, her feet kissing the wet earth. Her eyes reflected the same light that shone in the serpent's scales, and in that instant, something ancient remembered what it meant to feel. The river held its breath. Above, the stars leaned closer. Below, the current began to hum softly at first, then rising into the old song of creation. The girl knelt by the water, her hands tracing the silver ripples. The Naga listened, and in her heartbeat, it heard the echo of its own. Thus began the legend that would bind the realms of water and sky, of gods and men, in love and ruin, a tale whispered by the river for all eternity. In the beginning, the river breathed, and in its breath, the world was born. Welcome back to my channel. This channel specializes in writing about epic tales and myths from around the world. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help me out. Today, we will dive into a story titled The Naga of the Mekong, the forgotten myth of Southeast Asia's serpent god. Here is the detailed content. Chapter I, The Silent Depth. The river had always been silent. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of depth, an ancient stillness that spoke without words. Beneath the slow swirl of silt and the mirrored face of the water, something vast slept, coiled within its own eternity. It was not yet known as the Mekong. The people who lived along its misty edges simply called it Mother River, the giver and the taker. They feared it, loved it, worshipped it, and somewhere in that reverence, the Naga dreamed. In its slumber, it remembered the beginning, the first tremor of the world, when creation was not yet solid and time had no spine. It remembered the birth of rain, the laughter of the first winds, and the slow heartbeat of the earth beneath the waves. Each sound, each current, became part of its flesh. It was the river, and the river was it. For countless centuries, the Naga's body stretched beneath mountains and forests, unseen but ever present. Its tail wound around caverns of quartz and shells. Its breath formed the mists that kissed the treetops. Its eyes, deep and golden, glimmered faintly beneath the surface, two suns that rose only in dreams. To the humans above, it was myth. To the river itself, it was memory. At dusk, when the air turned cool and dragonflies hovered over the reeds, villagers would light oil lamps by the banks. They would whisper into the water prayers for harvest, for protection, for mercy from floods. Sometimes the current would rise in answer, a gentle swirl, a wave that touched the candles without extinguishing them. And the people would bow deeply, believing the river had listened. Yet there were moments when the silence deepened, too heavy, too watchful. The fishermen could feel it in their bones, a presence beneath the calm surface, like the heartbeat of something immense. The oldest among them would mutter, "Do not cast your net too far. The Naga sleeps there." And so, for many generations, the peace held. But peace, like the river, never stands still. It began with whispers, strange shapes in the depths, coils of light seen under the moon, water that shimmered red as if reflecting unseen fire. The elders said it was an omen, the spirit stirring after a 1,000-year dream. Then, one night, a fisherman named Samchai found his nets torn to ribbons. He swore he had seen a flash of gold beneath the water, scales as large as shields, eyes like burning coals. He fled, leaving his boat adrift. By morning, it had vanished, swallowed by the river. The village trembled, offerings doubled, songs of praise turned to pleas for forgiveness. But the Naga did not rise. It remained still, listening to the fear ripple through the air like thunder. For deep within its heart, the serpent remembered something older than wrath, sorrow. The Naga's world had once been perfect, water unbroken, sky unchallenged. But long ago, before men walked upright, and before the first temple stone was laid, there had been another being, Garuda, the firebird of the heavens. The Naga and Garuda had once shared the same breath, both born of the cosmic pulse that shaped creation. Yet their natures clashed, one of flame, one of water. One sought to rise, the other to flow. When Garuda demanded dominion over the skies and the rivers alike, the Naga refused to yield. Their first battle had torn the heavens. Fire met current, thunder devoured light. The earth cracked and the sea boiled. From that war came the mountains, the scars of their struggle, and the river itself, the trail where the Naga's blood had cooled the flames. Now, as the Naga stirred once more, the memory of that ancient war shivered through the current. Its coils flexed within the mud, sending tremors that shook the roots of trees and loosened the stones of forgotten shrines. The earth held its breath, and above, far beyond the clouds, something vast and bright turned its gaze downward, eyes of fire watching the slow awakening of its old enemy. But the Naga did not yet rise to fight. It was not anger that called it this time, but curiosity. For the serpent sensed something new in the world, something delicate and strange. A new kind of rhythm beat through the air, fragile but insistent, the pulse of human life. It was not the slow breath of forests or the steady heartbeat of stone, but quick, uncertain, hungry. The Naga could hear laughter on the wind, see flickers of firelight dancing along the banks, the living warmth of mankind. And within that warmth, it felt an echo of itself, a yearning for connection. So the Naga waited and watched. It watched the farmers plant their rice in neat rows like prayers written upon the soil. It watched children chase the shimmering fish that darted between the reeds. It watched lovers cast offerings of jasmine and lotus into the current, their wishes carried on the flow. And in watching, the serpent learned something new, beauty. The river, once a vessel of eternity, now pulsed with stories, fleeting, fragile, but full of life. The Naga had never known impermanence before. Now it understood why gods envy mortals, for though their lives were short, their hearts burned bright. Yet, as centuries passed, the Naga also witnessed the shadow that came with human ambition. The same hands that prayed for mercy began to build dams of stone. The same mouths that sang hymns to the water began to boast of mastery over it. The serpent's sorrow deepened. It whispered to the current, trying to warn them. The floods came as messages, not of punishment, but of memory. Each deluge, a reminder. The river gives, the river takes. Still, they did not listen. And so, the Naga returned to the depths once more, curling into itself. Its dreams were heavy with smoke and thunder. Within those dreams, it saw flashes of what would come: the fall of kingdoms, the tears of a princess, the return of fire to the sky. The Mekong flowed on, unaware that beneath its tranquil surface, destiny was stirring, a serpent's breath waiting to rise. And one night, beneath a silver moon, when the air hung thick with the scent of lotus and rain, a new sound broke the stillness. A voice, soft, human, trembling, singing to the river. The Naga opened its eyes. Chapter 2. The War of Elements Before Time Was Measured. When the stars still whispered to one another, there was harmony between sky and water. The Naga flowed through the depths, coiling in rhythm with the earth's pulse, while Garuda soared above, its wings scattering sunlight like golden seeds. Both were children of the same creation, born from the breath of the eternal mother. But harmony is a fragile thread. Even gods can hunger. Garuda was flame incarnate, proud, brilliant, restless. It looked upon the rivers and saw the reflection of its light shattered by ripples. It looked upon the ocean and saw no end to its rival's domain. Envy kindled in its heart, a spark that grew into a storm. One dawn, the sky burned brighter than ever before. Garuda descended from the heavens, its feathers blazing like molten gold, its eyes twin embers of wrath. Villagers along the ancient river saw the clouds ignite and fell to their knees, thinking the sun itself had fallen. Brother of the deep, thundered Garuda, its voice shaking the mountains. The sky belongs to flame and air, not to shadow and flood. Rise, serpent of the mud, and yield your dominion. The age of fire begins. The river churned, the winds stilled. From beneath the surface, the Naga rose. The water split like a curtain of crystal, and the serpent emerged, vast and radiant, its scales shimmering with the colors of the earth's veins, jade, sapphire, gold, and obsidian. Its eyes glowed with an ancient calm, yet behind them stirred the weight of eternity. Garuda the Naga spoke, its voice like the deep roll of thunder beneath the waves. The sky may burn, but without the river, the fire dies. Do not forget, the world breathes through both of us. But Garuda's pride was deaf to wisdom. With a scream that tore through the heavens, it unleashed its power. Fire rained upon the forests, and steam rose where it met the river's breath. The Mekong boiled, fish fled, and the mountains glowed red with reflected flame. The Naga struck back. Its tail swept across valleys, summoning floods that swallowed the burning fields. The two forces clashed, water against flame, calm against fury, and the balance of creation trembled. Above them, the stars dimmed. Below, the earth split. Garuda dove, wings folded, slicing through the storm like a blade. The Naga coiled upward, jaws opening to meet it. When they collided, the sound was like the breaking of the world, a single note of chaos that echoed through eternity. Lightning was born that day. The first bolt struck from the heavens, forged from fire and water, locked in eternal combat. Thunder followed, the voice of their struggle. And from the shattered fragments of their energy, new forms of life began to bloom. Coral in the sea, birds in the sky, reeds along the banks. Creation thrived amid destruction, but neither could claim victory. For every flame Garuda cast, the Naga birthed a new wave. For every flood that rose, the bird's wings beat back the torrent. The heavens turned black with smoke, the rivers red with molten stone. The balance teetered on the edge of collapse. Then came the voice, soft yet commanding, like the wind before dawn. Enough. It was the eternal mother, the unseen spirit, who had woven sky and water into one world. Her presence rippled through all things. The river stilled, the clouds parted, time itself seemed to bow. You were born to dance, not to destroy, she said. Together you form the breath of life. Inhale and exhale, rise and fall. If one ends, the other cannot exist. Garuda lowered its burning wings, and the Naga bowed its crowned head. The silence that followed was vast, filled with the echoes of creation itself. But the mother's voice grew sorrowful. To preserve the balance, I must divide you. Never again shall you share the same sky or the same sea. Garuda shall guard the heavens, and Naga shall dwell beneath the waters. Yet, once every 1,000 years, when moonlight touches both air and wave, you shall meet again, not as enemies, but as memory. And so it was decreed. Garuda rose into the sun, trailing fire that became the dawn. The Naga sank into the depths, its coils dissolving into the flow of the river. The earth sighed with relief, the rains returned, the forests healed, the flames cooled to warmth. But from that day onward, the world carried their mark. The lightning that flashes across the monsoon sky, Garuda's scream, the thunder that follows the Naga's reply, and the rain that falls between them, the mother's tears. The villagers built shrines along the riverbanks to honor both powers. Statues of serpents and birds faced each other in eternal watch, their gazes never touching. Offerings of rice, flowers, and incense drifted down the Mekong, carried by the current as tribute to the balance that sustained life. Yet deep beneath the tranquil waters, the Naga did not forget. In its heart, it carried both awe and sorrow. Awe for the beauty born of their conflict, and sorrow for the distance that now lay between them. It dreamed of the skies it could no longer touch, of the warmth it once shared with its brother of flame. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, when the moon rose full and the river shone silver, the serpent would lift its head just above the surface. It would watch the reflection of the stars, Garuda's fires, far beyond reach, and hum an ancient song only the water remembered. And though the heavens were silent, somewhere, far above the clouds, a single golden feather drifted down, carried by the wind. It touched the surface of the river and vanished, melting into ripples that glowed faintly in the dark. The serpent closed its eyes. The war was over, but the bond endured, hidden, sacred, and eternal. Far to the east, dawn broke once more, painting the sky with flame and the river with gold, the eternal dance of fire and water continuing in silence. Chapter 3. The Birth of Kingdoms. The storm of creation had passed. The sky once again breathed softly over the Mekong, and the river, scarred but alive, carried the memory of fire and flood in every ripple. From its depths came silence, then whispers, then life. Reeds rose first, slender and green, swaying like prayers in the morning wind. Then came the fish, the birds, the beasts, all born from the mingling of Garuda as flame and the Naga as tears. The world began to hum again, a melody of renewal. But the river was lonely. The Naga, coiled in its jeweled palace beneath the waves, gazed upward through the shimmering veil of water. It watched the mountains rise and the forests thicken. It watched the rain fall like pearls upon the earth. Yet something was missing, a voice that could sing, a mind that could dream. So, in the stillness of a silver dawn, the Naga rose from the depths and whispered to the mudbanks. "Awaken," it said, "and remember the song of both sky and river." The mud stirred. From its warmth came the first humans. They stood trembling, covered in clay and sunlight, blinking at the vastness of the new world. Their hearts were filled with wonder and fear, for though they had life, they had no knowledge of its rhythm. The Naga watched them in silence. Its golden eyes softened. "You are made of both," it murmured, "water and ash, memory and hunger." From its breath, it gave them speech. From its scales, it taught them patience. From its heart, it offered compassion. And the humans built their first fires beside the river, their reflections flickering upon the waves like new stars. For a time, harmony returned, but fire always remembers its father. High above, Garuda watched from the heavens, its wings spread wide against the clouds. It saw the smoke rising from the human camps, the shadows moving along the riverbanks, and it felt a stirring not of anger, but of curiosity. "Children of the Serpent," Garuda mused, "you walk upon the land that once burned with my flame. Do you know what you hold, descending in a blaze of light?" The bird god appeared before the first tribe. The people fell to their knees, terrified by its brilliance. "I am the guardian of the sky," Garuda proclaimed. "You were born of river and flame alike. To live, you must honor both." He touched the earth, and from his talons sprang the first spark that would never die. Fire for warmth, fire for vision, fire for power. The humans rejoiced. They sang to the heavens, offering thanks. But as the flames grew brighter, the river darkened. The balance wavered once more. Deep below, the Naga felt the heat piercing its realm. Steam rose through the waters. It saw the humans celebrating, wielding the gift of its old rival, and grief welled in its heart. Already, it whispered, "They forget." It sent dreams to them that night, visions of floods and serpents, of glowing eyes beneath the current. Some awoke in terror. Others knelt by the river and offered bowls of rice and flowers, whispering prayers into the flow. And so 2 ways of life were born. Those who followed Garuda raised cities upon the hills, where the air was clear and the fires strong. They built temples to the sun, painted with gold, and spoke of progress and conquest. Those who followed the Naga settled along the banks, listening to the rhythm of the current. They farmed the fertile soil, sang to the rain, and spoke of patience and memory. For many generations, peace endured between them. Their festivals intertwined, sky fire and river light, in dances of unity. But beneath every celebration lingered the shadow of old rivalry. As the tribes grew into kingdoms, ambition crept into men's hearts. Kings looked to the heavens and desired what Garuda promised: dominion, glory, immortality. Priests gazed into the depths and hungered for the Naga's secrets: wisdom, magic, eternity. The river began to change. Where it once flowed free, dams of greed began to rise. The forests thinned. The birds flew farther away. The songs of the river people turned sorrowful, filled with echoes of warnings unheeded. And yet the Naga did not rise. It watched in silence, remembering the mother's decree. To intervene was to unbalance the world once more. But its heart, vast and ancient, began to ache with compassion. One night, beneath a moon swollen with silver, the Naga rose halfway from the river. Its scales shimmered like stars drowned in water. A child stood upon the bank, small, barefoot, eyes wide with awe. "Who are you?" the child asked. The serpent's gaze softened. "I am the breath of your ancestors," it said. "Tell your people, do not forget the water that birthed them." The child nodded, trembling, and when he grew, he became the first priest of the river, the keeper of balance. He built a shrine from driftwood and stone, and there the people came to offer their prayers once more. The fires burned softer, the floods grew gentle again, the river sighed with relief. But far away, in the mountains of flame, Garuda's light flared once more. The wind carried whispers of kings who sought the sky's power, of warriors who believed themselves divine. The Naga knew then that peace could not last. It gazed toward the horizon where river met sky, where water reflected flame. The world of men, it murmured, is too young to remember. And with that, it sank once more into the deep, leaving only ripples upon the surface, the heartbeat of destiny moving quietly toward the storm to come. Chapter 4: The Serpent and the Queen. The river had watched the birth of kingdoms and the rise of men who spoke to the sky, but forgot the whisper of the water. Yet among them, one soul still listened, a woman whose heart echoed with the rhythm of the Mekong itself. Her name was Scylla. She was born beneath a moonless sky, when the river was black and quiet, and her first cry was said to summon silver ripples across the surface. Her mother, a fisherwoman, whispered that the child was blessed or cursed by the river spirits. As Scylla grew, she carried that whisper with her, half blessing, half omen. She was unlike the others. Her eyes shone faintly green beneath the sun, and when she sang, the current slowed to listen. Flowers bloomed in her footprints, and fish gathered near wherever she bathed. The elders said she was marked by the Naga, a vessel of something ancient that slept within her blood. Years passed, and Scylla became the queen of the river kingdom, chosen not by lineage, but by the will of her people. She ruled with kindness, her voice gentle yet firm, her gaze steady as still water. Under her reign, the Mekong thrived, rice grew tall, rains came on time, and even the storms seemed to bow before her. But the deeper the peace, the darker the dreams. Each night, Scylla dreamt of a voice calling her name from beneath the water, a voice deep and endless, like thunder beneath the current. In her sleep, she saw golden scales glimmering in darkness, eyes that burned with both sorrow and affection. One night, when the moon was full and the air heavy with mist, she could no longer resist the pull. She walked alone to the riverbank, the water reflecting her pale figure like a ghost. "Who calls me?" she whispered. The water stirred. Then, from the depths, the Naga rose. The serpent's body coiled with light, vast and graceful, its form both terrifying and divine. The river glowed blue and gold around it, waves parting like curtains before a king. Scylla fell to her knees, trembling, but not from fear. "Are you the one who haunts my dreams?" The Naga's voice rumbled softly, like a drumbeat under her skin. "You are the daughter of my memory," it said. "Long ago, I blessed your ancestors, and in your veins my power sleeps. The balance is breaking again, queen of the river. The fires of men rise too high. I have come to remind them through you." Scylla looked into its eyes, and something inside her awoke, a pulse, ancient and endless. She felt her heart beat a line with the flow of the river, her breath merge with the mist. She saw, for a moment, all that the Naga saw, the endless paths of the currents, the souls of fish and forests, the hidden light beneath the water's skin. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you still listen," the Naga said. "And the river answers only those who remember its name." From that night, Scylla changed. She would vanish at dusk and return at dawn, her hair damp, her skin cool as moonlit water. The people whispered that she consorted with the river god, that she had become its bride. Some feared her, Others worshipped her. Her rule grew strange, merciful yet distant, as if her heart now lived between two worlds. The priests of Garuda heard of this and grew restless. They warned the Mountain King to the north. The serpent rises again. Its queen will drown your fire. The Mountain King, proud and bold, sought to test the prophecy. He sent messengers bearing gifts of gold and silk, asking for Queen Scylla's hand in marriage, but Scylla refused. "The river has already chosen my path," she said simply. The king's pride turned to rage. He gathered his army and marched south, their banners burning red like Garuda's wings. Villages along the Mekong trembled as smoke filled the sky once more. Scylla stood upon the riverbank, alone, her crown of lotus petals trembling in the wind. "Will you fight for me?" she asked the water. The surface shimmered. The Naga's voice came again, softer, sadder. "I fight only for balance, not for power. But if you call my name, I will answer." The queen closed her eyes. When the enemy reached the banks, the air turned cold. The soldiers mocked her, laughing at the lone woman before them. Then the river roared. 1,000 ripples rose, twisting into shapes, serpents of light, vast and glimmering, born of moon and current. They struck without sound, weaving through armor and flame alike. The earth shook, the mountains trembled. When dawn came, no trace of the army remained, only lotus petals drifting upon a calm, silent river. The people wept, both in awe and in fear. They crowned Scylla again, this time with reverence beyond mortal measure. Yet the queen no longer smiled. She had seen too much, the cost of divine favor, the loneliness of being chosen. Years passed, and her legend deepened. They said she never aged, that her eyes glowed like emeralds in the dark. They said the Naga visited her each year when the rains returned, and that their union renewed the strength of the river. But one day, she walked into the Mekong and did not return. Some claimed she was taken as the Naga's eternal bride, to rule beside him in the halls of crystal beneath the water. Others said she became the river itself, her soul flowing forever between the banks, guiding fishermen and calming floods. Even now, when the moon rises full and the waters shimmer silver, the people of the Mekong light candles and let them drift downstream. They call it Loi Nam Sila, the night of the queen's return. They believe that if the river glows that night, faintly, like a serpent of light moving beneath the surface, the queen is near, and the world remains in balance. But the Naga knows the truth. Deep within the current, it still whispers her name. And sometimes, when the night is utterly still, the river replies. Chapter 5. The Covenant of Fire and Water. Generations passed, and the name of Queen Scylla became legend. Her shrine stood upon the riverbank, draped with lotus and incense, guarded by stone serpents whose eyes were green as rain-soaked jade. Each year, when the full moon crowned the Mekong, the people lit their candles and sent them downstream, whispering prayers to the vanished queen and her unseen consort beneath the water. But the world of men, as ever, could not stay still. The memory of balance faded with the passing of kings. The mountain empire of Garuda rose once more, towers of red stone piercing the clouds, banners painted with wings of gold. The priests spoke of conquest, declaring that the fire of heaven was eternal and all below must yield. Water bends, said their high priest, Arunvata, but fire ascends. To rule is to rise, and so began the march of flame. Villages along the river burned in their wake. Shrines were torn down, serpentine statues shattered, their fragments cast into the current. The priests declared the Naga a demon, a deceiver who bound mankind to stagnation. But beneath the surface, the Naga did not forget. It had watched the centuries unfold, the laughter, the greed, the love, the ruin. The river carried all of it within its veins, and the serpent felt the weight of every drowned prayer. It had kept its promise of peace since the day Sila vanished, but the fires of men now reached too deep. When the waters began to steam, the Naga stirred. In a dream, it reached the world of men again. It appeared not in wrath, but in warning, to a young prince named Kiran, descendant of Sila, who ruled the last free city of the river. The prince woke in darkness, the sound of rushing water filling his chamber, though the river lay miles away. At his bedside stood a figure made of light and shadow, its eyes glimmering gold. "Blood of Sila," said the voice. "The balance is breaking once more." Kiran fell to his knees. "Great spirit of the river, what must I do?" The serpent's form wavered, its voice heavy with grief. "You must remember, fire cannot be slain, but it can be bound. When sky and water are joined in one promise, the cycle can begin anew." Before Kiran could ask more, the vision dissolved into mist, leaving behind a single drop of glowing water upon his palm. At dawn, the prince gathered his council. His people, weary of war, begged him to flee eastward, but Kiran refused. He looked upon the river calm yet endless, and felt his ancestors' pulse within its flow. "We will not run," he said. "We will make a covenant, fire and water, sky and river, and in that unity find strength." That same day, the armies of the mountain arrived. Their drums thundered like the heartbeat of Garuda itself. Across the plains, the horizon burned red with banners. At their head rode the high priest Arun Vata, his armor gleaming like sunrise. "Kneel, river prince," he called, "and your people may live. Defy us, and your waters will boil dry." Kiran raised his sword, its blade reflecting both sun and river. "Then may the flames learn to drown." The two forces met at twilight. The sky turned bronze, the air heavy with smoke and mist. Spears clashed, arrows sang. The priests invoked their fire gods, their chants rising like storms of ash. The river warriors fought barefoot, their faces painted in blue and silver, whispering the name of Sila as they struck. For days, the battle raged. The Mekong itself ran red, and the air shimmered with heat. Then, when hope seemed lost, Kiran climbed the temple steps, overlooking the river, the same shrine where Sila had once prayed. The stone serpents were broken, their eyes dim, the air trembled with fire. He knelt before the ruins and pressed his hand upon the ancient altar. The glowing drop, the gift from the Naga, still burned faintly in his palm. "Mother of rivers," he whispered, "hear me now. I do not ask for victory, only for balance." The wind fell silent, the drums ceased, and from the river, the Naga rose. It was not the wrathful serpent of old, but a vast, shimmering presence, light upon water, voice upon wind. Its form filled the sky and river both, its scales reflecting every star. The fire priests fell back, blinded by radiance. Arun Vata raised his staff in defiance, but his flames sputtered and died. "Children of flame," said the Naga, its voice echoing through the air, "you have forgotten the law that birthed you. Fire without compassion consumes itself. Water without courage turns stagnant. You must remember your beginning or end together." As it spoke, Kiran stood beside it, the river swirling around his feet. From the heavens above, a single streak of fire descended, Garuda, reborn, in blazing wings. "Old brother," the bird cried, "you summon me again." "Not to war," said the Naga, "but to witness." Garuda hovered above the waters, its eyes fierce yet weary. It looked down upon mankind, broken, divided, trembling, and for the first time lowered its wings. "I see now," it said softly. "The flame that forgets mercy burns too bright." And in that moment, fire bowed to water. Kirin lifted his sword and plunged it into the river. Light exploded from the point of contact, blue and gold intertwining. The covenant was sealed. The fires receded. The flood withdrew. The two forces became one, vapor rising, rain falling, mist forming above the earth. When the light faded, both armies had vanished. Only Kirin remained, standing knee-deep in calm water, his eyes reflecting the stars. The serpent and the bird were gone, but their voices lingered in the wind, two halves of a promise reborn. From that day, peace returned to the river kingdoms. The priests of flame and the keepers of water rebuilt together, forging temples that faced both sky and current. And though centuries would pass, every full moon the people still told the tale of Kirin, the prince who joined fire and river, and of the covenant that saved the world. Yet, beneath the surface, the Naga watched still, knowing that peace is but the breath between storms. Chapter the 6th. The river's curse. Centuries passed, and the covenant of fire and water became a distant legend, sung by river folk at twilight. The shrines of the Naga and the temples of Garuda stood side by side, their spires glinting in the sun, their reflections rippling together upon the Mekong. For a time, the world was whole, the river bloomed with lotus. The rains came as promise, not punishment. Children learned that the world was born from balance, flame and current, sky and flow. But men are forgetful creatures. As kingdoms rose and fell, the meaning of the old covenant faded. Gold replaced faith, and temples turned from sacred to splendid. The priests who once kept watch over the river began to speak not of harmony, but of dominion. They preached that mankind had surpassed the spirits, that the Mekong no longer needed the old gods, for the hand of man could command the tides and forge its own reign. The river grew silent. It began subtly, the currents thinning, the fish retreating into hidden depths. Farmers who prayed for rain found their fields cracking beneath the sun. At first they blamed the heavens, then the winds, then one another. But in the deep hours of the night, when the moon burned white over still waters, some swore they could hear whispers like the hiss of scales brushing against stone. "The river remembers," they murmured. Far upstream, where the mist clung to the mountains, an old hermit tended a shrine of crumbling stone. He was called Saman, last of the river keepers, a lineage said to descend from Prince Kirin himself. His hair was silver as moonlight, his eyes clouded yet sharp as river glass. For decades, he had warned the cities below, "The balance is breaking again," but no one listened. Then came the season without rain. For 7 months, the Mekong shrank into a scar. Boats lay stranded upon cracked earth. Villages that once floated now stood upon dust. The priests gathered in golden halls, demanding explanations from the heavens. Yet no prayer brought rain. Desperation turned to madness. Rival cities blamed one another. Armies marched for the river's remaining pools, claiming them as divine inheritance. The old covenant was forgotten, trampled beneath greed and steel, and with every drop of blood spilled, the river darkened. One night, as thunder rolled across a dry sky, Saman walked barefoot to the riverbed. He carried no weapon, no offering, only the ancient pendant of the Naga, carved from black stone. He knelt where water once flowed and pressed his palm into the dust. "Spirit of the river," he whispered, "if you still hear, remember us, not for our arrogance, but for our longing. Return to us, if only to forgive." The ground trembled beneath his hand. From the depths of the earth came a faint hum, low, mournful, vast. The air shimmered with blue light, and for a moment the ghost of water seemed to ripple across the dry plain. Then came a voice, deep as thunder, yet cold as the grave. "You call for forgiveness," said the Naga. "But forgiveness cannot flow through empty rivers." Saman bowed his head. "The people have lost their way. Teach us again, Great Spirit. Let balance return." The light dimmed, the voice grew quiet, but not before whispering one final word, a warning older than stone. Blood must remember blood. When dawn came, the old hermit was gone. Only his pendant remained, buried half in dust. In the years that followed, tales spread across the Mekong Valley, of ghostly floods that came without rain, of serpents seen in dreams, weeping golden tears, of children born with eyes that shimmered like scales. The elders whispered that the Naga's curse had awakened, that the river no longer sought harmony but vengeance. Downstream, in the city of Chanthora, a young woman named Mia began to dream of water. Each night, she saw the river rise higher, heard voices beneath its surface calling her by name. When she woke, her hands were wet, her heart heavy with sorrow she did not understand. On the seventh night, she saw him, a man of shadow and light, with eyes like molten gold. "You carry her blood," he said, "the blood of Sela and Kiran. The river calls you home." When Maya awoke, the drought had ended, but not as anyone hoped. Black clouds gathered without wind, and rain fell like ash. The Mekong swelled beyond its banks, devouring the fields it had once nourished. Whole villages vanished beneath the flood. The priests cried out that demons had returned, but Saman's followers, few and scattered, whispered the truth. The Naga is not our enemy. The curse is of our own making. As the waters rose, Maya fled into the mountains, guided by dreams and the pendant that had belonged to the hermit. At every step, the river followed her, a serpent of mist winding through the valleys, its voice echoing in her bones. "You must remember," it whispered, "or the river will remember for you." In the highest cave of the range, where the air shimmered with light, she found a wall covered in ancient carvings, scenes of the first covenant, of Kiran and the Naga, of fire and water joined as one. Beneath the final image lay a single inscription, half-yearsed by time. "The balance of the world lives in the memory of its children." Nia fell to her knees, realization burning through her like lightning. The curse was not the wrath of a forgotten god. It was the river's grief, mourning the loss of remembrance, the death of promise. That night, under storm and moonlight, she swore an oath. "I will carry your story, great river. I will remember for those who have forgotten. And if my blood must pay the price, let it be so." The Naga's voice answered, low and sorrowful, "Then the curse shall become a covenant once more." When the dawn came, the floods began to recede. The people found Mia's body upon the riverbank, her hand clasped around the black pendant. Her eyes were open, reflecting the calm surface of the restored waters. And though no one could explain it, the Mekong flowed again, silent, vast, and alive. But the elders knew. They said the river had taken its daughter back, and through her, balance had returned, for now. Still, When the full moon rises and the water glows faintly blue, some say they see her walking upon the current, the girl who remembered, the last heir of the covenant, and the keeper of the river's curse. Chapter 7. The Serpent's Prophecy. For 40 nights, the Mekong flowed in silence. No wind stirred its surface. No bird dared to cross its mist-veiled expanse. The people whispered that the river was mourning, that the girl Maya had become one with the current, and that, through her sacrifice, the Naga once more slept in peace beneath the waters. But peace in this world is never still. It is a fragile thing, trembling like moonlight upon a restless tide. On the 41st night, when the moon rose red and heavy, the river began to glow, not gold nor silver, but a strange, luminous blue. The fishermen of Chanthora, who saw it, dropped their nets and fell to their knees. For upon the glowing surface walked a figure draped in white mist. Her hair flowed like ink, her eyes shimmered like the depths, and in her hands she held the black pendant that once belonged to the hermit Saman. She was neither alive nor dead. She was the river, remembering itself. The people called her Maya Reborn, the daughter of the Naga, and though her feet never touched land, her voice carried across the villages like wind through bamboo. The curse is not ended, she said. The river sleeps, but its dreams are heavy. When fire burns without mercy, and men forget again, the flood will rise a final time, not to punish, but to begin anew. Thus began the prophecy of the serpent. Her words spread like ripples, whispered by farmers at dawn, sung by monks in hidden shrines, carried down river by traders who did not dare to look upon the water for too long. But where some saw warning, others saw power. The kings of the Mekong kingdoms, fearful of losing their thrones to divine judgment, summoned their priests. Interpret her words, they commanded, and tell us what the river demands. The priests, greedy for favor, twisted her prophecy. The river calls for tribute, they said. The Naga demands gold and blood offerings to keep the floods at bay. So once more the people returned to fear. They built statues of gold and cast them into the current. They burned incense by the hundreds, and some, desperate, offered their own children to the water, believing the Naga hungered for souls. But the river did not answer. Its glow dimmed, its voice grew faint. The prophecy had been misunderstood, as all truths are when greed distorts the tongue of gods. Only a few still listened with clear hearts, monks, wanderers, and the river children who lived by instinct more than faith. Among them was a boy named Anan, an orphan born on the night the floods had claimed Mia's village. He was said to have been found floating in a reed basket, untouched by the waters. The elders whispered that he was chosen, the final echo of Mia's blood. Anan grew up beside the river, silent but watchful. The fish swam to his shadow, and the storms seemed to avoid him. When he reached his 17th year, he began to dream. He saw the Naga, vast, shimmering, crowned in moonlight, coiling beneath the world. From its mouth flowed rivers of stars, and from its eyes fell tears that became rain. In its coils, the shape of a woman, Mija, drifted like a memory. Anan, she sighed, her voice like water over stone. The river's end is near. The sky burns again. You must go to the source, where the first promise was made, and awaken what sleeps beneath. When he awoke, the air was heavy with heat. The rains had ceased. The horizon burned crimson, and smoke rose from the mountains to the north. The priests called it a divine omen, but Anan knew better. The world was repeating itself. Guided by dreams, he set out a priver, carrying nothing but the pendant black stone, worn smooth by generations of touch. Villagers tried to stop him, warning of spirits and serpents, but Anan only bowed and said, "The river calls me. I must listen." As he traveled, the Mekong changed. The water grew darker, thicker, filled with whispers. At night, faces appeared beneath the surface, not of the dead, but of those yet unborn, crying for a future that might never come. On the seventh night, a storm struck. Lightning split the sky, and from the heart of the river rose the Naga itself, vast and terrible, scales glimmering with galaxies. Its voice shook the heavens. "Why do you come, child of men?" Anan fell to his knees, clutching the pendant. "To awaken the balance," he cried. "To fulfill the prophecy of Maya." The Naga's eyes softened. "Her name is still spoken." "Yes," said Anan. "She lives in every ripple, in every story told by those who remember." For a moment, the serpent was silent. Then it coiled around him, not in threat but in protection, and the storm stilled. "Then listen, Anan of the river," said the Naga. "The prophecy is not of destruction, but of renewal. Fire and water must meet once more, not in war, but in union. Only through one who carries both within may the world begin again." Anan looked into the serpent's golden eyes and saw a vision, the Garuda's wings burning above a land of ash, and the Mekong twisting below, shining like silver through the ruin. Between them, a single figure stood, neither bird nor serpent, neither god nor man. When the vision faded, the Naga spoke its final words. "The river will rise once more, and when it does, the world must choose what to remember." Then the waters surged, swallowing Anan whole. For 3 days and nights, the river churned. The people fled to the mountains, believing another flood had come. But when the storm finally cleared, they saw the river flowing calmly once again, and on its surface, a newborn child, cradled in a lotus bloom, wearing a black pendant around its neck. The monks who found him called him Asha, which meant hope, and thus the prophecy continued, not an ending, but a beginning whispered through generations, carried by the river that never forgets. Chapter the 8th. The child of hope. The river was calm when the monks found him. The flood had ended, leaving behind silence, mist, and a single lotus drifting upon the current. Within its petals lay a child, naked, sleeping, untouched by mud or debris. Around his tiny neck hung a pendant of black stone, polished smooth by time and memory. When the monks lifted the child, the lotus dissolved into water, and the river sighed, not in sorrow, but in relief. They brought him to their monastery, high on the cliffs of Luangsila, a place where the wind smelled of incense and rain. There, they named him Asha, meaning hope, for they believed he was the river's answer to the prophecy, the rebirth promised by the Naga and the sacrifice of Mia. As Asha grew, strange things surrounded him. When he laughed, the air shimmered like sunlight on water. When he cried, clouds gathered and rain would fall softly, never in anger. The elders whispered that he carried both the breath of Garuda and the soul of the Naga, the balance of flame and flow reborn in human flesh. But the world below had forgotten balance. The kings of the lowlands, hearing of the miracle child, began to quarrel once more. Each claimed that the boy must belong to their realm, that his power would bless their harvests, their armies, their thrones. Envoys arrived at the monastery, bearing gold, promises, and threats. The monks refused them all. "He is not a prize," they said. "He is a bridge." Yet even bridges can be broken by those who do not understand their purpose. When Asha reached his 12th year, a dream came to him, clear and vivid as dawn. He stood at the edge of the Mekong, and before him rose a woman of mist, her eyes deep as the river. "Mother," he whispered, though he had never seen her before. "I am all that flows," she said. "I am memory, sorrow, and renewal. You were born from our covenant waters, forgiveness and fire's yearning. The world below burns again, my child. You must remind it to breathe." Asha awoke trembling, the pendant warm against his chest. That night, lightning struck the mountains. The next morning, messengers brought grim news. War had erupted along the river once more. The kings of the western plains had dammed the upper waters, starving the eastern lands. Villages burned, and the Mekong, once a source of life, became a line of division and blood. The monks gathered around the boy, seeking guidance. But Asha only gazed toward the horizon, where the river disappeared into haze. "The Naga grieves," he said quietly, "and the sky has forgotten how to weep." That night, he left the monastery. He walked alone down the mountain, barefoot, following the river's whisper. The stars above moved slowly, as if watching. Along the banks, refugees huddled in silence, clutching bowls, children, ashes of their homes. To each of them, Asha offered only words. "Remember the river. It does not hate. It only reflects." Many thought him mad. Some called him a prophet. But when he passed, the air grew cooler, and the stagnant pools shimmered to life. Seeds sprouted again where his feet had touched. Weeks passed. His name spread across kingdoms, the river child, the walking lotus, the voice of balance. But power, even the gentlest kind, always draws shadows. One night, soldiers from the warlord Tanasura found him by the water's edge. They dragged him in chains before their master, a man who claimed descent from Garuda himself, his armor gilded, his eyes burning with pride. "So," said Tanasura, circling the boy, "you are the spirit they whisper of, the child who speaks with the river. Tell me, does it obey you?" "The river obeys no one," Asha said softly. The warlord laughed. "Then perhaps balance must serve power." He ordered his priests to summon fire, a ritual once sacred to the Garuda, but now twisted by greed. Flames rose in spirals, bright and cruel, and the boy was cast into their midst. The soldiers turned away, unable to watch, but the fire did not consume him. It bent around him like a bowing servant. The pendant upon his chest glowed, and a voice, ancient, vast, filled the chamber. "Fire, remember your brother." The flames turned blue, then gold, then clear as water. The walls shook, the river nearby roared, as if awakening from centuries of sleep. When the light faded, the chains lay melted on the ground, and Asha stood untouched. He walked to the stunned warlord and placed a hand upon his chest. "Power without mercy is drought," he said, "and drought ends in dust." Then he turned and walked away. Behind him, the warlord fell to his knees, weeping not from pain, but from the unbearable weight of understanding. From that day, the fires of war began to fade. Armies laid down their weapons. The Mekong rose once more, gentle and clear, and across the kingdoms, people spoke a new prayer, not to gods of flame or water, but to balance itself. Yet deep beneath the surface, the Naga stirred. It watched the boy, now a young man, moving like a star, reborn, and it whispered to the darkness, "The world learns again, but will it remember?" And in the sky, a single feather of light drifted down, glowing softly as it fell, a sign that Garuda too was watching. The prophecy was not complete. The child of hope had brought peace, but peace is fragile, and memory fades. Soon a new choice would come, one that would decide not the fate of the river alone, but of the entire world that drank from its veins. Chapter 9. The fire of heaven. Years passed like drifting clouds, and peace once more blessed the lands of the Mekong. The river ran full, its waters clear as crystal, and the people flourished. Villages became cities, and temples rose again along the banks, their golden roofs glittering in sunlight. Everywhere, songs of Asha, the child of hope, were sung. They told how he tamed the fire and calmed the floods, how his words softened kings and restored the balance between heaven and earth. But songs, like rivers, can change their course. For as peace grew, so did pride. In the city of Langara, built upon the highest bend of the river, the new king, Rayon the Radiant, looked upon his kingdom and felt a hunger no feast could sat. He had been a child when Asha's miracles brought peace. He had seen the river rise and the fields bloom. But now he desired more than harmony. He wanted dominion. He called upon his priests and scholars. The river has bowed to us, he said. Its spirit walks among men. Why should we stop at balance? Let us ascend. Let mankind rule the sky itself. The priests hesitated, but fear disguised itself as reverence. They nodded and said, "Yes, Majesty. If the gods walked once, perhaps they can be summoned again." And thus began the fire of heaven, a grand ritual unlike any before. They built a tower at the heart of Langara, its foundation set upon the river itself. It rose for years, a pillar of stone and gold reaching toward the clouds. The people called it the Flame Spire, and its summit shone with a beacon of pure fire, fed day and night by oil and prayer. When Asha heard of it, he was no longer a boy, but a man, calm, ageless, with eyes like still water. He traveled to Langara to see the tower himself. It was beautiful and terrible. The air around it shimmered with heat. The river below, once full and singing, now ran sluggish and dim, its energy consumed by the rituals above. The people no longer prayed to balance, they prayed to ascend. Asha stood before the king. "Rayon," he said softly, "you build your tower on the river's heart. Do you not hear its pain?" The king smiled, proud and blind. "Pain is the price of greatness, Holy One. Did not the Naga flood the world once to cleanse it of weakness? I do the same, but with fire, not water." "You mistake purification for power," Asha replied. "The gods you seek are not in the sky, they sleep beneath your feet." Rayon's eyes hardened. "Then let us wake them." That night, the ritual began. Priests gathered around the Flamespear's summit, chanting hymns that twisted the old language of the river. They burned offerings of gold and blood, believing the heavens would open. The sky turned red. Thunder cracked like splitting bone. Asha climbed the tower through wind and flame, the pendant blazing at his chest. He called out to the priests, to the king, to anyone who would listen, but their voices were drowned by the roar of the fire. At the tower's peak, King Rayon stood alone, arms raised to the heavens. "Let the sky be mine," he shouted, and for a moment it was. The clouds tore open, and from the wound in the heavens burst a light so fierce it seemed the sun itself had descended. The fire coiled, screamed, and took form a vast winged being, crowned in flame, eyes like molten gold. Garuda, the bird god, had returned, but not as savior, as judgment. Its wings stretched across the horizon. Its voice thundered through the bones of mountains. Who summons me from my rest? King Rayan fell to his knees, trembling but defiant. I am the heir of fire. I seek your power, Divine One. Grant it to me, that man may rule as God. Garuda looked upon him, and for the first time since creation, it wept. Foolish child of dust, it said. Even flame cannot burn forever. You reach for the sun with hands of clay. And then the fire turned. The tower shook. The beacon blazed white, consuming itself. The priests screamed as the heat swallowed them whole. Rayan reached for the light and vanished. Asha stood alone at the edge, the pendant glowing with the deep light of the river. He raised it high, and the roar of the Mekong answered. From far below, the Naga rose, vast, shimmering, sorrowful. Its body coiled around the collapsing tower, its voice echoing through the chaos. Fire has forgotten again. The river surged upward, a tidal wave of light and memory. It struck the tower, merging flame and water, sky and earth. Steam enveloped everything. When it cleared, the tower was gone, and in its place stood only a single lotus made of crystal, glowing faintly with both blue and gold. The people of Langara wept. The sky cleared, but Asha was gone. Some said he had perished in the storm. Others believed he had become one with the balance, the living bond between Naga and Garuda. The monks whispered that when the river shines gold at dusk and the sky reflects blue upon it, Asha walks there, unseen, eternal. The fire of heaven had burned itself out, yet deep beneath the waters, something stirred. The Naga's coils glowed faintly with the heat of what it had absorbed, fire reborn within water. And far above, in the whispering winds, Garuda watched, its wings folded, its eyes sorrowful. For both knew what men did not. Balance was not yet complete. One last cycle remained. The world had seen creation, covenant, curse, prophecy, and rebirth. Now would come the return of memory, the final reckoning of gods and mortals alike. Chapter 10. The Return of Memory. The river slept for 100 seasons. Its waters moved like breath, shallow, dreaming, filled with memories that only the dead could read. Villages had risen again on its banks, but the people no longer spoke the old prayers. The temples of Langara lay in ruin, swallowed by vines, their golden roofs turned green with moss. Yet every year, when the monsoon winds came and the clouds rolled low, the Mekong glowed faintly at dusk, blue and gold, as if remembering. The elders called it the light of Asha, a sign that the river still wept for the one who had vanished within its depths. Children would run to the banks, laughing, tossing flowers into the current, never knowing they touched the shadow of a god. Deep beneath the surface, far below the reach of sun or current, a heart began to beat. It was not a mortal heart. It was slow, immense, and ancient, a pulse that echoed through the very bones of the river. Around it lay the sleeping coils of the Naga, its scales dim and cracked, its once mighty form weakened by the centuries. Above, faint as mist, lingered the memory of Garuda, wings folded against the stars, waiting. Between them, suspended in the stillness, floated a single figure, Asha. His body neither aged nor decayed. His eyes were closed, his pendant dim. But within him, two forces stirred, flame and water, sky and river, bound by the breath of man. When the 100th monsoon came, thunder rolled across the delta, louder than any before. The clouds cracked open, and lightning speared the river's heart. The waters erupted, hissing like dragons. The lotus of crystal that had once replaced the flame spire rose again, glowing, trembling, and from its core, a voice whispered, "Remember." Asha gasped. His eyes opened. He saw darkness and light swirl together, memories rushing back like floodwaters. The birth of the river, the wrath of the gods, the fall of Langara, the sorrow of both Naga and Garuda. But he also saw something else, visions not of the past, but of futures that could yet be. He saw men building again, not temples but machines, iron ships cutting through the sacred waters. He saw smoke where there had been prayer, and greed where there had been faith. He saw the river choked by its own children, and he wept. The tears drifted upward, glowing faintly. Each tear became a fish, a star, a memory, the scattered soul of the Mekong reborn. He rose with them, breaking through the surface beneath a storm that howled like the first dawn. When he emerged, the world had changed. The forests had grown wild and dark. The cities gleamed with strange light. Towers of glass stood where temples once did, and the riverbanks were caged in steel. The people no longer bowed to the water. They dammed it, split it, named it theirs. Asha walked among them, unseen. His bare feet left ripples in the puddles. His shadow flickered in electric lights. Some who passed him felt a chill, others a peace they could not name. He was no longer wholly of the gods, nor of men. He wandered to the ruins of Langara, where the flame spire once reached heaven. There he found a temple half buried in sand, guarded only by silence. Inside, the walls were covered with carvings, not of gods, but of men and serpents, birds and rivers, embracing, fighting, becoming one. As he touched the carvings, they glowed faintly, the air trembled, and before him appeared two shapes, one of fire, one of water, Garuda, Naga. But they were shadows now, not gods, but echoes of what had been. "Child of balance," said Garuda, its voice like a dying flame. "The cycle turns again. Men forget, and in forgetting, they wound the world. Will you stand with them or against them?" Naga's voice rose from the ground, deep and mournful. "The river is dying, Asha. The flow slows, the breath fades. If it stops, memory itself will end. But to save it, you must remember all that came before, even what you wish to forget." Asha closed his eyes. "I am both of you. How can I choose?" "By remembering what neither of us can," Garuda whispered. "Compassion." The temple shook. Lightning flashed through the cracks of its roof. The carvings began to move, the figures of men and spirits merging, dissolving, becoming one vast mural of motion, the eternal dance of creation and destruction. Then Asha understood. Balance was never meant to be still. It was motion, endless, flowing, alive. He knelt between the two fading gods, pressed his palms to the floor, and whispered a single word, the first word ever spoken when the world was born. "Flow." The earth quaked. The river answered. From beneath the temple, water surged, clear and golden. It spread through the ruins, washing away dust, stone, and sorrow. It rushed toward the cities, through dams and gates, unstoppable. But it was not destruction. It was memory. Every drop carried whispers of what once was, of what could be again. The people felt it in their dreams, in their blood, in the stillness after the storm. Children awoke, speaking names they'd never learned. Fishermen saw lights beneath the water that guided them home. Even the elders said the river spoke once more. As dawn broke, the storm ceased. The Mekong gleamed like molten gold under the morning sun. At its heart stood Asha, waist deep in the water, arms open to both horizon and sky. Above him, The faint silhouette of Garuda spread its wings. Beneath, the coils of Naga shimmered with light. For one breathless moment, all three were one flame, water and life, the trinity of creation reborn. And when the wind carried the scent of rain through the valleys, the people whispered, "Asha has returned." But Asha's eyes looked beyond them, toward the horizon, where the river met the sea, for he knew the balance, though restored, was fragile. Men would forget again, as they always did. The cycle was not broken, it merely began anew. He stepped forward, letting the current take him. The river opened, welcoming its child home once more. And somewhere in the deep, the Naga stirred, not in sorrow, but in peace, for memory had returned, and with it, hope. Chapter the 11th. The Song Beneath the Sea. The river led him to the edge of the world. There, where the Mekong met the endless sea, the water grew heavy with silence. No birds cried, no wind stirred. Even the waves seemed to hold their breath, as if they too feared what lay beyond. Asha stood upon the threshold, his eyes fixed on the horizon, a thin line where sky and ocean kissed. He took a single step forward. The sea swallowed him whole. At once, the world changed. There was no light, no time, only the endless pulse of water. It pressed against his skin, his breath, his soul. The deeper he sank, the more the river within him began to fade, until even the sound of his own heartbeat was replaced by another rhythm, vast, ancient, and sorrowful. It was the song beneath the sea. He could not tell if it was voice or vibration. It moved through him, through every current, every molecule. It was the voice of the world before words, before rivers, before sky. He closed his eyes and let it carry him down, down, until he reached the place where even light forgot its name. There he found the ruins of another realm. Temples of coral lay shattered upon the sea floor, their towers entwined with kelp. Statues of forgotten gods watched with eyeless faces as schools of glowing fish drifted past. Giant shells, cracked and hollow, whispered fragments of prayers in languages no living mouth could form. And at the center of it all stood a gate carved from bone and pearl, wide as a mountain. Upon its arch were inscribed symbols that shimmered with faint blue fire. Asha reached out, and the runes flared to life. The gate opened, not outward, but inward, into memory itself. He stepped through, and the sea began to sing. The song was 1,000 voices, men and women, beasts and gods, all bound in the same breath. Their harmonies wove together like river currents, telling stories that had never been told. He saw visions within the sound, the first rain upon the newborn earth, the laughter of spirits that shaped the land, the sorrow of oceans as they watched men build walls of stone. Then he saw them, the elder spirits. They rose from the darkness like mountains waking from dreams. Some had faces like serpents, others like birds or men, and some shifted between all three. Their eyes burned with pale light, their bodies made of smoke, coral, and memory. Child of the river, they spoke as one, their voices merging into the song. Why have you come to the sea? Asha bowed his head to remember. Memory is pain, said one, whose body glimmered like obsidian. You carry the wounds of both flame and flood. Why open them again? Because forgetting is death, Asha answered, and the world above forgets. The spirits regarded him in silence. Their presence was immense, yet there was a strange tenderness in the depths of their gaze, as if they, too, longed to remember what they once were. At last, the oldest among them, a vast figure, crowned with coral and starlight, leaned closer. "Then you must learn our song. But know this, Asha, to hear it fully, you must surrender yourself. You cannot remember and remain unchanged." Asha did not hesitate. "I am ready." The spirits encircled him. The sea grew still. Then, one by one, they began to sing. It was not music as men know it. It was creation itself, unspooling through sound, the heartbeat of the ocean, the first whisper of wind, the cry of life emerging from the deep. The song entered Asha's veins, his bones, his soul. It filled him until he could no longer tell where he ended and the sea began. He saw everything. He saw the Naga's birth from the tears of the earth. The first time Garuda soared across the dawn. He saw the spirits of the Mekong, Irrawaddy, and Chow Freya, sisters of water, flowing together before mankind named them apart. He saw the rise and fall of empires built upon their backs, the endless cycle of gratitude and greed. He saw himself not as Asha, but as every being who had ever knelt beside the river, the fisherman, the child, the monk, the king. Each face was his, each prayer his own. And then, at the heart of it all, he saw the source, the true beginning. It was not fire nor water, not God nor void. It was a sound, a single note, perfect and infinite, from which all existence unfolded. And he understood. The river, the sea, the sky, all were instruments of the same song, the melody of balance. Tears streamed from his eyes, though in the deep they became pearls. His body glowed with blue-gold light, brighter and brighter, until even the elder spirits shielded their gaze. When the song ended, silence followed, vast, sacred, unbroken. The eldest spirit spoke again, softly now. "You have remembered what even we forgot. You carry the melody of creation. Guard it well, for the world above is deaf to it. But know this, the song is not complete until it is sung once more beneath the sun." The sea trembled. The gate began to close. Asha bowed deeply. "Then I shall return and let the world remember." The spirits extended their hands, dissolving into light. "Go, child of the river, carry the song to the living." The current seized him, lifting him upward through miles of water. The darkness peeled away. The deep pressure turned to warmth. Above him, a faint shimmer grew the sun through the waves, waiting. He broke the surface with a gasp. The sea was calm. The dawn painted the horizon in gold. In his hands, he held nothing. Yet, when he opened his palms, the water there pulsed with rhythm, faint but alive. The song, he smiled, though tears still shimmered in his eyes. The melody whispered through his breath, soft at first, then stronger. The wind carried it toward the land. Birds began to sing in answer. The river, far inland, stirred. The world began to hum again. And from deep below, the spirits of the sea sang with him, not as gods, but as echoes of something eternal. The song beneath the sea had risen once more, and Asha knew the time of ending was near. Chapter the 12th. The last flood. Dawn broke like the slow breath of a god. The first rays of sunlight brushed the sea, and the water blazed in gold. Upon its endless face, a single figure walked calm, weightless, ageless. Asha had returned. Behind him, the horizon shimmered with the echoes of the song beneath the sea. The melody wove through the air, invisible yet alive. It was not a song of words, but of remembrance. The sound of water flowing where it once had ceased, the sound of the world breathing again. He turned toward the shore. From the edge of the continent, the Mekong stretched forth, glittering like a serpent, awakening from dream. Its voice called to him, low, yearning, eternal. The river recognized its child, and the sea welcomed its brother. Between them, Asha walked, bearing the song that would bind them forever. As he neared the land, the world began to change. The air trembled, trees leaned toward him, and even the clouds paused their wandering. The earth remembered him, though centuries had passed. When Asha stepped onto the sandbanks, the people of the river gathered, drawn by something they could not name. Fishermen, monks, children, even the weary laborers from the cities, all stood in silence. They felt it first as a vibration in their bones, then as warmth upon their skin. The song, Asha lifted his gaze to the sky. The pendant at his chest flared gold and blue, intertwining, as if the river and the flame were one. He raised his hands, and the earth grew still. "Long have we forgotten," he said, his voice echoing like thunder, yet soft as rain. "We have divided what was meant to flow together, the sea from the river, the spirit from the breath. But the time of separation ends today." He took a step forward into the water. It shimmered beneath his feet. Behind him, the crowd watched, silent, trembling, awed. The river's current began to rise. The surface glowed, and from its depths emerged the Naga, vast and radiant, its scales blazing like liquid sapphire. The heavens cracked with lightning, and from the storm descended Garuda, wings outstretched, feathers alight with flame. Fire and water met again. The world held its breath. For an instant, they regarded each other, the eternal opposites, the guardians of the balance. Once they had fought, once they had wept, now they bowed. Asha stood between them, his face calm, his voice a whisper that carried across the ages. "No more cycles," he said, "no more forgetting. Let the river remember the sky, and the sky remember the sea." He began to sing. It was the same melody he had learned beneath the ocean, the song beneath the sea, but now it rose higher, brighter. The Naga's voice joined him, deep and sonorous, while Garuda's cry cut through the heavens. Their harmony shook the mountains. The very air turned to light. The flood came, not of destruction, but of awakening. Water surged through the valleys, sweeping away the dust of centuries. It filled the broken temples, washing the faces of forgotten gods. It climbed the steps of cities, flowing through streets like veins of light. Everywhere it touched, life stirred. The old trees blossomed. The fish returned. Even the stones seemed to hum with memory. People fell to their knees, not in fear, but in awe. They saw not wrath, but grace. They saw the river not as an enemy, but as the blood of the world itself. From the highest peak, lightning struck, and the heavens opened. Rain poured down, each drop shining gold and blue. Fire descended as light, not flame, and the two elements became one. Asha's body shone like a star. The pendant melted into his chest, fusing with his heart. His voice grew louder, echoing beyond sound. It was the voice of all rivers, all oceans, all lives that had ever flowed. When the flood reached its peak, Asha turned to the Naga and Garuda. "My guardians," he said, smiling softly, "your time ends, as does mine, but your essence will remain in the wind, in the rain, in the rhythm of the earth. From now on, every current, every gust, every heartbeat will remember us." The Naga bowed, its eyes shining with peace. We returned to the deep. Garuda folded its wings, and I to the light. But you, Asha, you are both. You will remain where they meet. Asha nodded. Where river meets sea. The flood began to calm. The golden rain turned to mist. The people watched as the three figures rose together, water, flame, and man, until they were swallowed by the horizon. When the light faded, only the river remained, vast, serene, alive. Its current flowed freely once more, from the mountains to the ocean, unbroken. And as the people rebuilt their homes, they found strange signs left behind. Lotus flowers blooming in dry earth, feathers of gold embedded in stone, ripples of blue light beneath the sand. The elders called this era the Age of Remembrance. Every year, when the river swells and the sea sings back, they tell their children the story of Asha, the child of the river, the keeper of the song. They say that if you listen closely at dawn, when the mist rises from the water, you can still hear his voice, a whisper, eternal and kind. Flow and remember, and the river does. The Naga of the Mekong complete epic. This is where the saga ends, not with destruction, but with unity. The spirit of Southeast Asia, the reverence for water, the harmony between earth and sky, finds peace through Asha's sacrifice. The flood becomes rebirth, the song becomes prayer, and memory becomes the soul of the land. Epilogue: the river that dreams forever. Centuries have passed since the last flood, yet the Mekong still sings. Its waters twist through 6 lands, carrying whispers from the dawn of time. People have changed, cities rise, bridges span the current, boats hum with engines instead of oars. But when night falls and the moon touches the surface, the river remembers. In the quiet hours before dawn, fishermen on their wooden skiffs still pause their nets. They listen. From somewhere deep beneath the ripples, a faint sound rises, a hum, a sigh, perhaps a song. The elders smile, for they know it well. It is the voice of Asha, the child of the river, who once walked between gods and men. The story has become legend, then myth, then memory. Yet every generation rediscovers it anew. Monks in forest temples chant his name in the old tongue. Children shape little Naga from clay and set them adrift upon the current during the Festival of Lights. Lovers leave lotus flowers on the banks, believing the river carries their wishes to Asha's heart. They do not worship him, they remember him, and that is all he ever wanted. For remembrance is the soul's true prayer. In the deep places where sunlight never reaches, the Naga still coils, not in wrath, but in rest. Its body has become part of the earth itself. It scales the bedrock that holds the river steady. Sometimes, when the monsoon rains come, the villagers say they see its shadow moving beneath the water, long, graceful, infinite, as if the spirit of the earth stirs in its sleep. High above, in the blue beyond storms, Garuda glides unseen. The thunder of its wings becomes wind, the gleam of its feathers, lightning. When storms sweep across the delta, it is not anger that drives them, but renewal. The sky, too, remembers, and between them, unseen yet eternal, walks Asha. He no longer bears a body of flesh. He is the shimmer of dawn upon the river, the warmth that follows rain, the stillness before flood. Some say that when you stand upon the banks and close your eyes, you can feel his presence, a hand of water resting on your heart. Others claim he visits dreams, guiding lost souls toward the flow they have forgotten. The scholars of the New World, who no longer believe in gods, call these tales superstition. Yet even they admit there is something about the Mekong that defies all measure: its pulse, its persistence, its living memory. Satellite sea currents shift in patterns that resemble heartbeat waves. Machines record tones beneath the water, resonances too structured to be chance. They name it anomaly. The old ones call it the song. Each year, during the festival of remembrance, thousands gather along the riverbanks with candles. The surface glows with drifting light, blue, gold, and white, like stars fallen to earth. The people sing no hymns, they simply stand in silence, watching the current carry their lights away. Somewhere far downstream, where the river opens into the great sea, the candles vanish into the horizon. But the fishermen swear that when they look closely, the lights do not fade. They sink, as if taken by gentle hands, disappearing beneath the waves, where the song beneath the sea still echoes. In that silence, between the breath of sea and sky, the world remembers its beginning. And perhaps, in that remembrance, it stays alive. The Mekong flows on through war and peace, through drought and rain. Its waters cradle both the ashes of the past and the seeds of tomorrow. It is not merely a river. It is the pulse of the land, the voice of memory, the dream of a God who chose to remain human. When dawn returns and the first light brushes the surface, the river glows once more, blue and gold, like the eyes of the one who walked between flame and water. And if you listen closely, you will hear a whisper carried by the mist. Older than the world, yet soft as breath, flow and remember. And so it does, the river that dreams forever. End of the Naga of the Mekong.